All right, my friends, welcome back to another episode of The Real Rebuild. That's right, this is my house. We're walking through all the steps, we're rewatching some videos, and on this particular episode, we're going to really dive deep onto some issues that you've never really heard me talk about before. We're going to be talking about windows, roofing, and siding on this episode. So with that being said, Real Rebuild, let's get going. The Real Rebuild, a Build original series, is brought to you by James Hardy. This episode in particular, sponsored by Proseco. Let's get going. Okay, so windows, roofing, siding, giant topic. Buckle up, we got a lot to talk about here. So, first off, windows. One thing that if you've watched my videos, you probably don't know is that actually I have several manufacturers of windows in my house. When I did this series, I got JELD-WEN to sponsor the videos, and about 80+% of my windows and doors in the house are JELD-WEN. But I actually have three different styles of JELD-WEN windows and doors in the house. And I also, I hate to say it this way, but I cheated on JELD-WEN a little bit by putting a couple of other manufacturers in some random locations. I kind of thought of my house as a bit of a test lab, and I wanted to see what it was like both installing and also living with a couple of other small brands out there. Not small brands, but different brands out there. So first off, let's start with the install, and then we'll jump into the actual windows. So I want to review a couple of details from this video here. This is called Window Install with Thick Exterior Foam. Let's go to this YouTube video and let's talk about how we prep for the windows, and then we'll get into the windows themselves. So when you see this, actually I'm going to turn off the sound and kind of talk you through this. Here's an image of the garage on the first floor and the second floor, and a couple things that you want to note here. You're going to notice on this video that my exterior foam is installed already, and we did not install any foam above the windows, and you're going to see why in just a minute. But you're going to notice here, if we back up and actually drop the foam off of the house first, I want to show you what's happening behind that foam so you get a gauge. Now, if you remember my previous video, I talked about installing the foam with a 2x2 pressure-treated ledger board at the bottom plate, so the foam had something to drop onto. Below that, I used a bead of Proseco joint and seam filler, and then above that, we've dropped the foam. So in this photo you're seeing here, we've got the joint and seam filler from Proseco. That's that kind of pinkish fluid applied, going from a couple inches up, let's say 3 inches up on the zip system sheathing, to at least an inch, inch and a half onto the concrete. That's really giving my ultimate bug and water and air seal at the base of the house. The other thing I want you to notice on this image here is that the windows have zip tape all the way around them. And here's the reason why. Those windows are part of the air barrier system. And you're going to notice in a minute, like you see on this window on the left here, that we installed a 2-inch by 1.5 inch piece of pressure treated rip as a buck for the window. So the window had something solid to nail onto, and also we had something to drop the foam onto. Before that 2x2 went on, though, we did a zip tape all the way around those windows to make sure that the continuity between the zip system sheathing and the 2x4s on the inside from an air sealing perspective was maintained. That's also a great waterproofing detail, to basically run your water and air membrane all the way back inside the rough opening. So after this video, we put the 2x2 down on the base, and then we started installing the foam once the 2x2 was up on the window. The 2x2 went on just with a standard kind of deck screw. A Spax screw would work perfect for that. You're seeing we're just putting that all the way around as a picture frame around the window. And did we have to do pressure treated? No, we probably could have used regular wood there. I think that's what I had going, and it made sense. Oh, if this ever were to get wet. But certainly you could use regular 2x in this case as well, because it's really it's out of the rain. It's in a spot that's not going to have a problem. Now let's fast forward on this video. Here's Bill and I now doing kind of that first mock-up, that first install. On this side of the house, I have Auraline. You can see their sticker on there. That's a composite framed window. And now the window is being installed in kind of a quote-unquote normal fashion because of that window buck. In other words, it's coming out to the window's coming out to the face of the install. So now I can basically drop my trim and my siding right up next to it as normal. There's no recess in this space. And the reason now you can see that we left that piece of foam on top of the head off of the window is so we could tape properly and put a through wall flashing that I made custom for that space. And if you were to watch the whole video, you would see us getting into those details. So what you're seeing here is we're using that stretch tape to make a sill pan for the window. And really, this is a waterproofing detail in this particular case, not an air sealing detail. And you're going to notice actually where I am right here in this video, I didn't tape any of the seams on the insulation where they came together. I didn't think it needed it. We've got the zip system sheathing as the face of the air and the water barrier. And the window now is just being installed in a waterproof way so that if those windows ever were to have a problem with a leak through the frame, they wouldn't get into the building assembly. They would leak to the forward. And again, we wouldn't know if we actually had a leak. But we're still going to run these details the same. Even though it's on top of foam, we're still going to use a roller. And randomly, you would expect that if it wasn't on zip system or solid sheathing that you'd have a problem with that stretch tape, but it worked just fine on top of the foam. You can see it right there by Bill and I. We had no problems whatsoever. Funny enough, I'm wearing my mask. This was filmed during the kind of height of COVID time, so we wore masks a bunch. We would certainly not do that today. Okay, so fast forwarding on this window install. The rest of the window install is pretty straightforward. I do want to show you the head flashing details, though. I think that's worth noting. Let's just kind of zip through this install here. We'll show you that. Window install is the same. We're going to use a bead of a high quality sealant back there. I would use Sashco Big Stretch or Lexel on that window flange on 3 sides. We're not caulking the bottom of the window. And you also notice that there's no flashing tape on the top side of the window yet. Not necessary at this stage. And if we fast forward here, I really want to show you the head flashing, which is next. Oh. Let's pause here too. Another detail I really like is to put horseshoe shims down on the sill. It makes that window come up a little bit, gives a little bit of space so that if we were to get some water past that window, it's going to be able to run forward. And we're also going to use a spacer on the bottom flange as well to make sure that window, if it were to have a problem, will leak to the outside. All right, where's my head flashing? That's really what I want to show you next. Okay, so there's the horseshoe shims on the bottom. We're just giving a little bit of leak protection. Also notice we're not using a pneumatic nail gun. We're hand nailing this thing. I think that's really the way to go. I would not use a pneumatic. You could use screws, certainly, on windows like this as well. Here's a good note from this video. The tape is actually running onto the flange of the window just a little bit. You know, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch would be acceptable as well. We're just trying to give a little extra protection from water getting past there, and by running that up there, that's gonna give us just a little bit boost of some protection. Okay, so now we're using longer tape on the head, and we're taping over that 2-inch buck that we've got, 1.5 by 2-inch buck. We're gonna roll that down, and next we're gonna be installing that head flashing. Okay, here we go. Now here's a mistake I made on my house with these head flashings. These were custom bent at a shop here in Austin, Texas. If you're in Austin, highly recommend Capital Company, amazing sheet metal workers. I typically in the past have used pretty thick gauge steel for my, or stainless steel in this case, for my flashings, and I've actually kind of walked that back a little bit. This was 26 gauge. And darn, is it hard to work 26 gauge. I think I would go up to a 28 gauge or maybe even a 30 gauge steel just to make it a little easier to actually work it, to you know, cut it, bend it, all that kind of stuff. These are almost a little too thick. Now, will they last forever? Certainly they will, but I don't think had I gone down to a slightly thinner gauge, it would have made that big of a difference. Let's take a look at this. I'm actually going to go live on this one. Let's see what I had to say here.
Well, what we did is we knew we wanted a back piece of 2 or 3 inches. That's kind of standard. So we'll be taping this against the zip wall.
Yep.
This is our actual buck dimension.
Yeah, so that's our foam thickness.
That's right, and foam thickness. And then our the depth of it. And then this part is actually going to sit over the top of the window frame, and then with our standard 1/4 inch kick out and kick down, and with a reverse hem as to not catch any water. And then what we did is, Matt likes this detail where we end dam the window so water's not actually running down the leg of the window. It kind of coaxes the water to shoot out.
Yeah, so any water that comes down here, it's not going to want to run on the sides. It's going to want to kick. It's a slight detail, but I like that. I keep it small too, so I could either butt my trim or I could knife that through my trim if I wanted to. And there's just a little bead of geocell sealant on there. And here's what it's going to look like when it's all said and done. We're going to nail that up with a couple roofing nails, 4-inch zip tape here. That way anything above here gets in, it's going to want to kick out above the window, and it's not going to get this window wet. And then we're going to
Man, that's nice, isn't it? I love a good head flashing. I will be honest, though, there are some places I put head flashing on my house that I'm not sure I needed them. For instance, on the back of my house where I've got awnings, if you haven't seen that yet, there's a couple windows that I put awnings on. You don't really need a head flashing where there's an awning. And to be honest, if you have a second-story window with an overhang right above it, do you really need that head flashing? No, not really. These windows that were on a gable side, and this is kind of the south and western face of my house, which will get quite a bit of water. And the overhang is at least, I don't know, a dozen, maybe 15 feet above these windows. If there's any amount of water and wind happening, these windows do get rain that just sheets and cascades down the windows. So these ones absolutely need it. If you're building your own house, though, I would tell you, you could pick and choose where you need head flashing. And of course, you could save, you know, at least $50 a window by the time you think about the labor involved and your time picking those head flashings and actually getting them. So if you don't need it, don't worry about it. Another thing I will mention, though, is the Auraline does not come with a head flashing, and most windows don't. One thing I really liked about the JELD-WEN Sightline windows, and I haven't gotten into this yet, but I've got some other JELD-WEN windows in the house. The Sightline windows do come with a head flashing that's custom matched. And my understanding is there's maybe 1 or 2 other manufacturers out there that do include that. So that's really cool. When you're talking to your window manufacturer, ask if you've got a head flashing included and not just a install flange. That's not a flashing. You want something that's going to kick you want something that's going to kick water to the face of the window and go back to wherever your true waterproofing layer is. That's why this head flashing runs all the way back to the zip. And after Bill nails it up here, I don't know if we're actually going to show it, but we're going to tape that up. Oh, yeah, here we go. We're going to tape that up, and then we're going to put that last piece of foam that's missing. And now we're absolutely bomber when it comes to worrying about water on these windows. You're also going to notice that we ran that flashing long, actually past the buck or onto the buck distance, and then this part that actually sticks out is shorter, but water that were to come down here would run to the face of that window buck and the face of the insulation. Okay, let's spend a few minutes talking about the actual windows that I used in my house, and we'll actually go out and show you some of these from my house as well, because it wasn't real clear in the videos what went where. JELD-WEN Auraline is what I use kind of on at least 60-70% of the windows in my house. This is a composite, and here's their website. I think this is a good explanation. I'm actually going to read it from the website. Introducing Auraline, the best of both worlds, the long-awaited alternative to vinyl and wood. This is a composite, meaning they fused vinyl and wood together. I kind of think of a composite deck type material, giving the beauty of wood with strength and durability that surpasses vinyl. That is true. This is a really good budget choice window. And remember, when I first started the project, I didn't expect this to be my house. I actually was thinking that this was going to be a rental house. Maybe I'd resell it in a couple years. I didn't think I was going to live in it for a decade or two like I do today. So Auraline was a good choice for me. It was a good budget choice. Is it the best window in the world? No. I would tell you anything below a wood window or really below a fiberglass window is a compromise in some way, shape, or form. And so I think this is a good window. I chose it for the house, not thinking I was going to live there, but thinking that it was going to be a rental house. It was going to last a long time. It met the budget expectations. But in my mind, vinyl and composite windows, and I would probably lump fiberglass in there as well, are budget choices that have good performance and meet budget expectations. But if you're really building a custom home for you, for your family, that's going to last, I would upgrade and spend more. Honestly, there's some amount of compromise involved with a window like this. Not to say that they're bad, but there is compromise, and you have to know that going in. You get what you pay for is a phrase that works in all parts of life, and especially with building materials. For my builder friends out there, think about this with boots. Would you buy a pair of boots at Walmart that you're planning on wearing to the job site? Maybe. It's your first day in the job. You're not sure if this is going to last. You're not sure if you're going to stay doing this. You don't know any better. When you're a builder who's been around the block, you realize, oh, I get what I pay for with boots. And a Walmart boot is not the same as a Red Wing or some other nice brand of boots that I can resole that have really good leather, that are going to actually break in and feel better over time. So, when you pay $150, $250 or more, there's lots of boots that are even more expensive than that. You definitely get what you pay for. If you spend $100 for a pair of boots, well, guess what? You're probably going to assume that you're going to replace those. Is that a perfect example to windows? No, but there's definitely a lot of truth there. So take that for what it means. Auraline was what I used for a lot. Sightline, on the other hand, when I made the change from a remodel to a rebuild, I had to change some of the window package, and I'd already ordered a bunch of the Auraline, but I was able to make a change and move up to Sightline in a few places. The other reason I did this is because I was thinking about rating the house through the Passive House Institute US, FIAS, and I did several videos on that. To this point, I have not actually gotten my rating. That's a whole nother separate video, but I followed their guidelines. And so I wanted to upgrade my windows, or a lot of my windows, to triple glaze. You actually don't need to, depending on your climate, have to have every window as triple glaze in your house to meet Passive House requirements. But you probably need some, or if you're in a more northern and cold climate, you probably will need all to go to triple glaze. So I upgraded to Sightline, and honestly, I'd only installed one other JELD-WEN package prior to this and had pretty good results with it. I hadn't spent a lot of time with them. I really like Sightline. This is a nice window. Mine were pre-painted black on the inside, and on the outside, I mentioned they're aluminum clad, but it's a true wood window, and they came with a head flashing. I really like that. That's nice. This is a window that you get what you pay for. It is not the most expensive window in the market. You can certainly spend more, but I felt like this was a good value for a window that I wanted in my own house and to last and to have really good performance specs. Plus, I like that it was installed normally. I'm going to get to this in a minute, but I've got windows, and I've installed lots of European style windows that are flangeless, that you install mid cavity, and you have to kind of figure out how to waterproof them, how to install them. It's different. Those sight lines from JELD-WEN that were triple glaze, installed normally, look normal, felt normal. You honestly can't tell they're triple glaze on the inside, and they've worked really well. Couple other random things that I did that you don't know about. I installed one window from Inotech in my house. It's actually in my wife's office. If you're not familiar with this company, I met them a couple years ago when I was traveling in the Pacific Northwest. Inotech is a company that makes their windows outside of Vancouver, British Columbia, just kind of north of Seattle. I have the sense that they've got pretty good representation in the Pacific Northwest. I'm not sure if you're going to see them if you're East Coast or South like I am. But they shipped me one window kind of as a build show gift for my quote-unquote showroom, which actually is my house. I really like it. You know, it looks to me just like any other European window in terms of its manufacture. It's a UPVC frame. I installed it mid, or actually back cavity, so I have a very deep recess on the outside. A little bit of a bummer because it gets dirty on the outside, especially my sill. I have to clean that off on a fairly regular basis. That window is really cool. I really like it. However, it is European style, and one thing you have to know about European windows, if it's a tilt-turn window, is that they're an in-swing casement. I love the action because there's no cranks, there's none of this kind of stuff that you normally see when you think of casements. You just turn the handle and the window opens, but this is an in-swing window, and I've got a blind on that window because it kind of faces my neighbor and it also faces my propane yard where I'm storing stuff on the side of my house. And so if you open that window, you're swinging your window coverings out of the way, and the handle kind of juts into the room. There is some awkwardness there. So in terms of quality, I love Innotek. You have to know, though, any tilt-turn window, there is some downsides, and I think that in-swing for an American house where you don't have exterior shades like they do typically in Europe, that can be a thing. So, you know, if you're thinking about European-style windows, I would consider using as many fixed as possible. Next up, Lowen. I have one window from Lowen in my house. Just like Innotek, they sent me a sample window for my model home. And at the time when I ordered that window, I thought it was going to be my house, but I changed my floor plan and the window was going to be at my vanity. But then I mentioned in the previous video that Gary Klein helped me kind of redo my floor plan. And this window that was going to be on my vanity turned out to be in my master closet. And that's where my Lowen window lives. It's just one Lowen window. Lowen, you think of them as kind of an upper level product. They're typically a little more expensive than Jeld-Wen, than Andersen, than Marvin. They're also a little bit more detailed. Architects really like them because they have lots of options. A little bit more expensive as well. This could be my favorite window in the house, to be honest, though. It is a push-out casement, meaning grab the handle, push it out, and you're done. That's all you got to do. There's no cranks. There's no action. This is probably not an inexpensive window, but boy, is it nice. It also has a bug screen that rolls up like a blind on the inside, and you just push it down, and now you're good to go. So, you know, if money were no object, I think I'd do a house full of push-out casements and fixed from Lowen. This is also a triple glazed window in my house. The window numbers were fantastic. I really like that window. Again, it was a freebie, so thank you, Lowen, for sending that to me. Lastly, on the back of my house, you're going to notice that I've got a bunch of windows that are unclad wood. That's by a company called Fenster. Fenster also met them when I was in the Pacific Northwest and saw one of their jobs. They do passive house rated and passive house style, I would say, windows and doors. A lot of European style, but also some more American action as well. I did my lift and slide from them. I did a triple mulled window above my kitchen, and I did 2 single windows that were European tilt turn on my family room, kind of on either side of where my TV lives. I really like them. These are a bomber product. Very, very nice. True wood, thermally broken wood, though. There's some cork, I believe, inside the frame. And then the glass on all 4 of those openings on the back of my house is from a Canadian company called Light Zone. I keep expecting there to be some big announcement somewhere about Light Zone that they've gotten bought by a huge company. Fabulously efficient, very interesting company that's actually, I believe, quad pane because they're using some thin film technology in the center. And the windows in the back of my house are like R10 plus. I can't remember what the U factor was, but it was below 0.1, I believe. I'll have to look up the specs on that and post that as we post this video. Super cool. I did make one mistake, though. I was not paying attention at all to the action of the window and my kitchen faucet. And after I installed that window, one of my trades said, "Isn't that going to hit your kitchen faucet?" And I was like, "Oh, no, I'm sure it'll be fine." And then sure enough, like, what was I thinking? Yes, you can't even open the window in my kitchen because it hits my faucet. Super dumb of me. Was totally not paying attention. Easy mistake. But you know what? I don't really open my windows very often anyways. In fact, I've taken the bug screens out of all my windows because we just don't open them enough to matter. So it's not that big a deal in the end. It might as well be a fixed window. And if I did want to let some air in, I could do the tilt feature, which just tilts the window in and allows some air to come in, but doesn't actually open the window. So kind of funny. And the 2 windows that are on either side of my TV that are tilt turns, I think I've opened those once to check the action of them and have yet to actually use those. I've been in the house 2 years. Now, these are wood clad on the outside. I would be cautious about where you're doing that But for me, I wasn't worried about it because I put those awnings above those windows, and I've got a really low overhang above my family room area. So those windows never get wet. They are deeply recessed, so I've got kind of a sill on the outside, which does get dusty. I don't love that, but they look really nice in the back of my house. When I sit on my patio back there and make a fire at night, those wood windows just give some warmth and some glow to the house that I really like. I wouldn't use those if they were facing south or west, but in my case, 2 years later, they look like the day they were installed. They were pre-finished. They're a tilt-turn in-swing balsam fir with amber clear. Next up, my front door. I got a custom front door from Jeld-Wen made, and this was something I had learned about from my BFS rep. They actually can custom make to whatever you want a entry door system out of fiberglass. So when you look at my custom front door, it came pre-painted black. I didn't have to paint it on the job site. All fiberglass, all to my dimensions. It's kind of a weird dimension because I've got these ceilings that are somewhat less than 9 foot tall. I think my ceilings on my first floor are like 8'9", so my door's like 7'4" or something, something weird like that. They were able to make it no problem. Now this is not an inexpensive door. I want to say that door was like $12,000-ish for that entry door system. So not inexpensive, but exactly to my specs, exactly what I wanted. I actually got it triple glazed as well, so both the side lights and the front door are triple glazed. It's really cool. It's not Passive House certified. It doesn't have some of the special features like the Fenster does, like a fiberglass sill and some of that kind of stuff. But it's a really cool door. It's beautiful, and I really like that. And then I also, if you saw in the plans, I had a skylight on my porch, which I eliminated. I didn't think I needed it. I left 2 skylights in my family room, though. Would I do those again? I don't know that they actually give me enough light benefit in that part of the house because they're kind of facing to the east. I used Lamilux, which is a really cool European brand. I got them from 475 Supply. Great people, easy to work with. You can custom order whatever you need, and they make it in Germany and send it to you. This says flat roof skylights, but that is a pitched roof. And I did 1 fixed and 1 operable. I've only operated the operable window like twice. So in the end, I'm not sure it was worth having it wired and getting operable. I would probably just go fixed. But I really like this Lamilux. It's a thermally broken frame, triple glazed, laminated glass, so that if it were to have some hail or a meteor hit my glass, it wouldn't smash into the house. Also, you're going to notice it's a curb mount skylight. Big fan of curb mounts. I would definitely recommend curb mount. But did I need those in the living room? Not necessarily. It was really cool. And I thought it was going to give me a lot of light in that space, which it has. My house is pretty light during the day without turning any lights on, but that's been really cool. So let's switch gears now and talk about my roof. I did a couple videos on my roof that we can show you, but generally speaking, I've done so many metal roofs on clients' house and done so many videos and tried to promote metal in as many ways, shapes, and forms as possible because I feel like it's the best roof out there. That, of course, I had to go metal on my house. Big shout out to my friends at the Metal Roofing Alliance and Sheffield Metals in particular that sponsored the video on my house. I love it. It's a 24 gauge black painted roof. It's got some really cool technology with that black paint that actually provides some reflectivity and a huge warranty on fade and protection and all that kind of stuff. But my wife was adamant about not doing a Galvalume roof on this house like I had on my last house. She just really wanted that black roof, and so I figured, all right, it wouldn't have been my first choice from a nerd's perspective. I really like that reflective roof in my hot Texas heat, but I did all the details to make sure it wouldn't be a problem for me. You noticed in my earlier videos, I've got 4 inches of rooftop foam. I've got that roof on a vent system so that any water that gets past will drain out. Plus, it's going to provide some radiant barrier benefits. So I kind of did everything right from a building science perspective so that I could get the aesthetic look that my wife was really looking for. But a couple things I want to mention. We used a peel and stick underlayment on the entire roof. I really like Sharkskin SA. I think that's a great product. We did the same batten method that you've seen everywhere in my videos on the higher pitched roofs, On my low-pitched roof, though, I used a dimple type product, a 3D mesh product, which worked great on that front porch, which was probably like a 3 and 12 pitch, something like that. And I also, check out my video on this if you want to learn more. I did a vapor diffusion port. I'm not going to go into all the details on that now, but quickly I would say, if you're putting a dedicated dehumidifier in the house in a conditioned attic, I'm not sure you need a vapor diffusion port. If you're not doing that, though, if you're doing more production style homes with conditioned attics, spray foam in the attic, but no dehumidifier, I would consider doing a vapor diffusion port. I did it on my house, if for no other reason than I wanted to see what the details looked like and ensure that I wouldn't have problems. But, you know, I've got a Santa Fe 70 up in my upper attic, and I've got a Santa Fe 98 in my lower attic. I'm dehumidifying 10 months of the year. I really don't need that vapor diffusion port necessarily on my house, but years down the road, if someone takes those dehums out or they break and they don't get replaced, I know now I've got that vapor diffusion port. And again, that metal roof is going to be on there for many, many decades. I always say that metal roofs only get replaced for aesthetics, not performance. You know, it'll be 50 years before someone plus replaces that metal roof. It'll go through a hailstorm, no problem. It's just a terrific product. Let's switch gears, though, and end the video with siding details. I spent a lot of time nerding out on siding, and I also made some really good videos about siding that I think would actually be worth replaying some of the details to show you guys what I did. So before we get to the siding details, I want to direct you to this video, Siding Prep. Don't install siding before you watch this. I would go back and rewatch this whole video. There's some terrific parts, but let me show you just a couple highlights from this video, including this section right here.
On the bottom of that, I also, just for extra durability, put a bug screen on there that I stapled up here to the zip sheathing, and then I'm wrapping that around. That also gives me a little bit of extra protection on the bottom of my 2-inch polyiso. Now, if you watch my old videos, though, at the bottom of my polyiso, I actually put a 2x2 pressure treated at the bottom below this. So this is going to land on a 2x2, and then I've got this. But point being, this is where air can flow up at the bottom. Stay tuned for my next video where I'm actually going to talk about all the specific details on my James Hardie install. But at the top of the wall, we also need an air gap up there. That can either be at the top of your siding, like if you have a freeze board, you could put a gap there and you could use another one of these core vents there. Or you could have a vented soffit and have that go into that soffit area. Either way, but the idea is water penetrating through that siding is going to hit that air gap and it's going to fall harmlessly out of the way. Now, when I've talked about this in the past, I've had people say, oh, why aren't you using pressure treated battens here? You don't need them. These battens are living behind the siding. They can fully dry. They'll never have the chance to rot. They're not touching the ground. They're way off the ground. And then that airflow back there means that if there's a little bit of incidental moisture that gets behind there, no problem. It's going to drain and dry out. This is a cheap insurance policy for your house. If I messed up a detail back here and let's say penetrated a wire and forgot to flash it or missed it, with this rain screen gap, all of a sudden, those small mistakes are not as big a deal. Back to that same example of the Roman guard with his shield up, a little bit of water penetrates there, no problem. It's going to fall out harmlessly. There's nothing to force that water in. They're often referred to as a pressure equalized rain screen because the pressure of that air, that wind, forcing that water in is going to all of a sudden hit that space and it's going to fall down. There's no longer any pressure. So can you install your siding right up against your zip sheathing? Sure. Every siding manufacturer is going to talk about that, or up against your white house wrap. Is that best practice? No, it's not. This is the best way to do it.
Okay, so we're prepped for siding. The rain screen's on. Everything back there is sealed correctly. Another video that I'm not going to play the whole video for, but I think would be worth you guys going back and watching the whole video. It's called Mounting Block Details and High Performance Wall Assemblies. Whenever you're doing siding, you got to think about your penetrations first. And you've heard me say this before. I think one of the biggest rookie builder mistakes is putting your siding on first and then having your trades come into the building. So mounting blocks are your solution. If your trades are going to come before siding, they've got to have mounting blocks. You've got to figure out those details. And it's really not that many details. We're talking about the plumbers, we're talking about the HVAC guys, and the electricians. And so if you can figure out those three things that are going to penetrate your house and what's happening, whether it's hose bibs or 8-inch fresh air vents or exhaust vents, mounting blocks are a big key of that. Make sure those are ready to go before your siding contractor comes. And if you do that, you're going to be in good shape.
Let's take a minute to talk about the Hardie products that I used on the exterior of my house and how they look 2 years later. First off, the majority of the siding you're seeing here is James Hardie's HardiePlank siding. This is 6 1/4 smooth, which yields about a 5-inch lap. And man, I absolutely love that look. I'm a big fan of the smooth. Now this was Color Plus, which means it was a pre-painted version. And this color, this white color, happens to be paper white. My carpenters did a bang up job installing. And as we went on the job, they did a little bit of touch up as you go. They actually give you a really cool 2 or 3 different options for like touching up as you go. So here we are 2 years later. The house looks amazing. It's absolutely weathered the storms, the heat, the hail that we had a couple weeks ago, the crazy extreme weather like we get in Texas. And it looks fantastic. I expect this paint job is going to be here long after a normal paint job would need repainted. It's looking really, really good. Trim, let me tell you about my trim. I've got 2 different varieties. I've got a 3.5 inch and a 5.5 inch, a 5/4 smooth. This gray color is called Asteroid Gray. I also really like it on the back of the house here. You see I used a couple of natural colored windows. These are Fenster windows and doors. And just right here in the back of the house, and because I was covered so well, I had no problem with leaving the unpainted factory kind of finished wood color on here. The whole rest of the house though is Hardie products, with the exception of a couple of soffits. The soffits on my back porch here where my steel awnings are on the side porch, as well as the front porch were from Delta Millworks, and that happens to be an Akoya siding product with kind of a natural stain, maybe a light gray stain. The rest of my soffits are all pre-painted Hardie smooth, and you'll notice I actually did slightly different venting than the normal Hardie vents or vented soffit product, which I like as well. But I wanted to shove all my vents to the front, kind of where the gutter was. So what you're seeing there is just a off-the-shelf vent product that I got from my local BFS lumberyard. It's about a 2-inch wide vent strip. And this is not venting into my attic, it's literally just venting that overhang so I don't have an unvented space on the outside of my house. I want to touch base while we're talking about my Hardie exterior real quick on a few fronts: aesthetics, durability, and maintenance. As you can see, 2 years later, I have done basically 0 maintenance. In fact, I probably do need to wash down the siding on my house just because my landscapers made a big dirt pile and it was like pig pen back here in the backyard getting all this landscaping in place. I have not done that yet, so what you're seeing here in this video, this is unwashed, but man, it is an incredibly durable product. I also like how Hardie, because it's a fiber cement product, has very little expansion and contraction, which means that you don't want to, and in fact, they tell you in the instructions not to caulk the butt joints. You'll see if you watch the video on the install that I did a flashing detail behind there, so if any water got in, it would naturally flow to the outside. But you do not want to caulk your butts, and because there's such minimal movement, it looks great. You know, it's just a kiss joint basically between those butt joints. And then where my siding met my trim, it's probably a little hard for you to see right there, I did not caulk that joint. Now, I've got a rain screen install here, which means that I'm actually hollow by 3/4 of an inch of an air gap back there. And when the guys were installing my HardiePlank siding, they used an even spacer, so I've got a pretty even joint along there. I left that uncaulked. I figure, why caulk it? If I caulk it first, I'm gonna have to re-caulk it someday, whereas if I never caulk it, it'll be fine. And the idea is, it's not about keeping water out, it's about letting water out. That's a famous quote from my buddy David Nicastro. If you're using a rain screen system, you don't necessarily need to caulk everything. You can leave some parts uncaulked. Now, one area that I did caulk, and it's probably gonna be a little hard to see here, but between my Hardie trim in these recessed windows, I did put a nice big bead of Lexel, which is a clear sealant by Sashco, in between the wood and the gray that was asteroid gray that was pre-painted. And that clear was a really good choice. That looks fantastic still, but I do occasionally have to clean those sills on there because of that flat sill and that window being recessed. I have cleaned those sills, I don't know, once or twice a year just with some soap and water because they do get dirty. It's a flat surface on the outside of my house. Let me wrap up this portion talking about James Hardie with this thought right here. I'm really glad that I went with Hardie Fiber Cement. As a builder, I've used these products on my houses for over 20 years, and to finally build my personal house with it, total dream come true. Now, you're gonna see a lot of people that are talking about a lot of other siding choices out there, especially wood-based sidings. They're gonna say that they're cheaper, that they're easier or faster to install, but for me, Hardie products are the right choice. Yes, you need to take some precautions. You need to think about the install. It is a heavy product, but as you can see, 2 years later, absolutely durable, absolutely beautiful. This is a product that's really gonna last. And for me, if it's right for the home, it's right for me as a builder. So I'm a huge fan of James Hardie and all of their products. Big shout out to these guys for amazing products that look fantastic on my house 2 years later.
Okay, so now that we're 2 years in on the Hardie, a couple things that I want to make mention of. On my front porch and my back porch where my awnings were, I used some Delta Millworks wood on my ceiling areas because I wanted that kind of touch of elegance when you came in. By the way, my front porch, if you didn't see it on the video, is all artisan in a vertical fashion, which means I had to vary my rain screen on the front porch. But I went with that wood soffit in the porch, which my porch is pretty small. It's probably only 20 square feet, let's say. That was money well spent. On the other hand, I also did some wood soffit on my 2-story pop-up, thinking it would be a really nice kind of accent element. But I got to be honest, you don't see it from the street, and when you're walking up to the house, you're not looking up at a 2-story awning. You're looking at what's in front of you. I'm not sure I would do that again. I did Hardie soffit everywhere else on the house. I think I would do that again. I really like Hardie Smooth and Hardie Smooth soffit. It worked perfect. Now, I could have used the ventilated Hardie, which has the pin-punched holes pre-punched in it. I decided I didn't want that look. I wanted something a little more custom for my house. So I used an inexpensive aluminum kind of U-shaped vent channel. And remember, I'm not actually venting into the attic. I'm only ventilating my eave areas. So I didn't need that extra amount of ventilation. You'll also notice on my front porch when you look up that I've got some Coravent strips on both the front and the back. Anytime you've got an enclosed area on the house, especially when you've got wood, but certainly when you've got Hardie on there as well, you want to make sure that you've got some amount of airflow in there so that if there's any built-up moisture for whatever reason, some condensation that happens, whatever, that there's that ability for that to dry out and not get trapped in that space. So be cautious on that wherever you're enclosing areas like soffits on a high-performance house. You want some ventilation into that space. You don't want it so big that you can get big bugs in there, but at the same time, you do want some ventilation. You know, when it comes to durability, I think Hardie's second to none. In Texas, we get hammered with extreme heat. We've had some crazy storms. We had ice storms a year or two ago, and then it was 105 for, the entire month of July. This fiber cement, I think, is totally the way to go. And I did Keller Plus pre-painted, but I've done plenty of primed Hardie that we paint in the field over the years. And one thing that I always tell people about Hardie, and one of the reasons I really like it, is I'll say the sidewalk example. I'm not sure if the Hardie folks listening will like this example, but it's something I use and it resonates with me. As a builder, have you ever spilled paint on concrete before and realized, oh, shoot, I've got paint on this concrete? Well, it's a pain to get out. You can't just take a garden hose and get that paint out, right? Because the concrete absolutely absorbs that paint. You got to freaking power wash it off, and sometimes with a teeny little tip to get it off. I feel like Hardie Plank, that fiber cement, is really the same. It's like that sidewalk. That sidewalk is not going to degrade over time because of that cement-based product, and the same is true. It also holds paint really well. So over the years, when I've painted Hardie Plank, I've found that paint lasts much, much longer than especially wood-based sidings, which are going to have some movement over time, some expansion and contraction. It just goes a lot longer before you need to repaint. and it certainly doesn't have any issues with rot. Now, that being said, don't be dumb. Don't run your hardy plank down into the ground. I've seen this mistake made by a lot of builders over the years where they run their siding so it's actually touching the ground. That's not a good detail for any siding, including fiber cement siding, even though it's a very resistant. You got to make sure that you've got an air gap between your siding and the ground. You want that space for that to dry. And then when you install it on a rain screen like I did, let that area have some drainage and drying. You want that airflow to get underneath that rain screen and behind that hardy. So when it gets drenched in a rainstorm, and some water does get behind there, right? Because I didn't caulk it, it's just going to be able to drain out, and then the air is going to get there and dry it back out. This is going to be a crazy long-lasting exterior in my house. I'm going to have no problems with this. Maintenance is going to be absolutely minimal, / I've done none since I've been in the house for 2 years on the outside. I think aesthetically it looks really good. It also, in my case, looks fairly traditional. I did a few more modern details in the house with a single corner board rather than a double corner board and a few things. But aesthetically, I think it's really good. Low maintenance, and the Keller Plus, as I mentioned. By the way, there is a 15-year Keller warranty on that Keller Plus. But if you are thinking about it and you've got the ability to spend a little bit more on Keller Plus, I think you make it up. You don't have to pay the painters later. You've got a baked-on factory finish. And as you can see on my house, it just absolutely looks fantastic all these years later. Guys, we've spent a long time on the house today, but hopefully you learned something. I tried to really get personal on this episode and tell you some things that hadn't been said or maybe weren't seen on or understood super well on YouTube, kind of in my scattershot posting about my house. This series has been a lot of fun. Stay tuned for next time. We're going to get into insulation, drywall, and we're going to get into my bathroom waterproofing. Guys, stay tuned for episode 5. We're going to get into insulation, drywall, and bathroom waterproofing. With that being said, follow us on TikTok or Instagram. Otherwise, I'll see you next time on The Build Show.